Hello and welcome to Control-Delete Tutorials. My name is Jason and I'm going to try something different with this tutorial. So in the past I've typed up the entire thing, but this one is really long. I don't know if that's going to work because the last one I recorded was like 150 lines and that one took about an hour and a half to go through. So I thought what I could do instead was I'm going to show the code first. And then after I show the code, I'm going to go through and break down the different parts of it and explain what's going on without typing it. And we'll see how people feel about this. I'm not really certain. But first, let's start off just by going down through and looking at the code. So we can see different methods or functions that I have, different class that we're going to have. I should probably explain what this is. So I wanted to create a text-based Pokemon game. Starting out relatively simple with only 3 of the elemental types, fire, grass, and water. And I wanted to make the game so that you could go through and have it either be player versus player or player versus CPU. So that's what I set out to do with this one, and it's long. It's got a lot going on with it. And so yeah, we'll take a look through everything and just kind of see how the main part is broken down and work our way through the code. So that's all the code. We've got quite a lot to go through here. I'm going to try to keep it relatively quick, but still explain everything to the best of my ability. So in the previous 3 videos that I've done where I'm talking about these text-based games that are based on like early 80s, late 70s, like text adventure games, in the previous videos, I had shown a different way that you could like print out messages, and I wanted to go over the one that I created for this video. So in order to do this, we are going to have to import the time module, and we're going to have to import the random module. I've set up 2 variables, one for displaying each letter on screen one at a time, and a speed for that. Now I've sped it up. It doesn't look great the way it is right now. But if you were to execute this and run it, we can make it look a little bit better there. Or we'd be able to use this for something else. It looks a little nicer slowed down a little bit, but so that's our letter delay, and then we have a message delay that's set to like 0.5. Again, you can set these to whatever you want. And then we have a definition for using this. So instead of using the print message, we're going to use a type message that I've created, where it takes in a string of text, and then it runs a for loop, and for every character in that message, we'll print out whatever that character is. And instead of using the typical end of our print, which normally will give us a new line, we're just going to have it use an empty string. So that means that the letters will appear next to each other rather than on new lines. And then we're going to sleep before we go to the next letter that prints out. So we'll use time.sleep based on our letter delay. And then after that, I'm going to print a new line, an empty new line. And then I'll have my message delay. So that'll give me another message underneath. So if I was going to write, different things. Yeah. So that kind of goes through. It's a method that you can use in any functions, any of these that we are creating. So the room exploration one we could import, and we could have this actually show up as its own class that we could create, and then we could import it into any of our projects. But I just wanted to show it in this one. Okay, next, I've created a player class. And so both players will actually use this. So first we'll have the initialize function or method, which always is going to have self. It's going to have our name and our element type. So our name is going to be the name that we enter, and the element type will either be fire, water, or grass. Okay, those will get stored here. We start them off with 500 HP. And then we have these accuracy amounts. So what I've done here is I have done this in a way that I'll have 3 values that we can use. Each one would have an index value associated with it. So here we would have 20, 12, and 2. And I'll show you where these are used a little bit later. But basically, it's so that we can create a range later from 0 to one of these numbers. So this would be 0 to 20, 0 to 12, 0 to 2. And if our number lands on 1, that'd be like getting a miss in the game. Otherwise, we'll land a hit. So this just allows us to have like an accuracy. We have our critical hit, which should be just... Do I end up using this here? I do, don't I? Self-accuracy, calculate critical hit. Yeah, I actually do not use that anymore, so I'm going to take that out of there. We'll just comment it out for now. Oops. Okay, so we'll just take that out for now. I'm not too worried about that. I ended up handling the critical hit a different way than here. Yeah, I should be able to just take it out. I don't think it's used. Okay, so here we're checking based on our elements. We're going to set up our other information about the player. So here, if our element is fire, our weakness is water, and we're strong against grass. Our moves are going to be ember, which has, this is a count for it when we use it. So ember and the count. So every time we use the attack, this number will go down. Same idea with fire punch. We have less of those. And then inferno. Now the reason we have less is because they're power. So each move, I set up another dictionary for the power of the moves. So ember has a power of 40, fire punch has a power of 75, inferno has a power of 100. So we can only use that a few times. And also each of these numbers set up with these. So our accuracy, we have our ember, which is going to use a higher range, so it means it's a less chance that we'll get a miss. And then we have the other one here, which is going to give us a slightly less or more of a chance that we might get a miss. And then finally, the last one, we have like a 30% chance that we're going to get a miss. So our range will be from 0 to 2, 0, 1, 2. And that's how that will work. So this is our dictionary for our accuracy, our dictionary for our move power, and our dictionary for our moves. And I've just used the same term in all of these so I can basically assign different values with those. Might be a better way to do that. That's just the way that I'm doing it. Okay, so if our element is fire, that'll be that. If the element is grass, then we'll have a weakness to fire, and we're strong against water. We have different moves: Vine Whip, Seed Bomb, and Energy Ball. This is following the exact same thing as we just talked about up above. And then finally, element water, weakness is grass, strong against fire. Here we have our moves for that: water gun, waterfall, hydro pump, set up exactly the same as the last two. Here we're calculating whether or not we get a critical hit. So I end up feeding a number into here. The number I feed in, if it is 2, that means I have a critical hit. Otherwise, I don't have a critical hit. So this is a multiplier that I end up using to multiply the critical hit times, so the attack power times 2, or the attack power times 1. So it allows me to double that. Okay, so that's my calculating critical hit. By the way, this is the end of my player class. Okay, so that's the end of it. Okay, then I have a couple of different definitions for how turns are going to be handled. So here's one for player 2 and player 1, and then there's one up there for CPU. I'll come back to these in just a second. We have a definition for our battle system. Okay, so while true, player 1's turn. Afterwards, it's going to check if player 2's health is less than or equal to 0. If it is, then we know that they fainted and player 1 is the winner. And we'll break out of this code, or out of this while. If our game type equals PvP, that means player versus player, it'll be player 2's turn. Otherwise, it'll be the computer player's turn. So either way, after their turn, we'll check on the stats of player 1. If the HP, the health, is less than or equal to 0, then we know that player 1 fainted and player 2 wins. And then here's where the game officially starts right here. So we type out a message that says, "Welcome to Poketext." The game type, we can enter in either PvP or PvCPU. That'll convert to lowercase. We'll have the user put in their first name, or a name, whatever name they want. So this will be player 1, input your name. From that point on, it'll call player 1 by that name. Here it'll say while true. So here, player type, we're going to enter in. And if they put in fire, grass, or water, it's going to let them break out of that code and it'll set the value there. Otherwise, it's going to keep asking for it. So it'll set it'll call on the player class. It's going to input the player's name and player's element type of choice. And then we're just going to have a blank piece of code there, a blank printed message, so we have a space. Now here we have to check, is it PvP or is it a CPU game? So depending on what type we pick. Here we have the player's name for input player 2, same idea. Player type, we have an input that's going to say the player's name, choose a type, fire, grass, or water, and we'll convert that to lowercase. If the player's player type chooses fire or water or grass, it'll break out of this code. Otherwise, it's going to ask for this again until we type in the right thing, and then we'll print out a blank. Otherwise, if it's the CPU, the player name gets defaulted to CPU. We have a random number between 0 and 2, so 0, 1, and 2. So those are 3 choices. If it equals 0, they're a fire type. If it equals 1, they're a grass type. And if it equals anything else, it's a water type. And then it'll create the player 2 object based off of the player class using this name and whatever type ended up going in here from the random generation. Here's where we begin the battle. So we're going to call on the battle function, which takes us up here. Okay, and we kind of talked about how that would go through. So we'll talk about player 1 turn and the player 2 and CPU turn in just a second and how they work. Let's see if there's anything else we need to discuss here first. After the battle system has finished, so after it checks whether or not one of the players is lost and we break out of this code, it's going to send us down here where it says for us to put in an answer. Do we want to play again? Type in yes or no. Converts it to lowercase. Here it checks, did we type in an N letter word? So no, or just the letter N. If so, we break out of the code and it says thank you for playing. Otherwise, it's going to say restarting the game, and then it starts the game over from the beginning. Welcome to Poketext. It's a pretty clever name, right? All right, so let's talk about what happens here. While true, we call on player 1's turn. Now, all of these are going to be pretty similar. They're just copy and pasted. The CPU ones works a little bit different. So the first thing that happens is we use that type message function at the beginning that I talked about. We put in a formatted string. We're going to call on the person's name. So if I typed in Jason, which is my name, it's going to put in Jason. It's going to say it's your turn, choose an attack. Okay, next it's going to go through. It's going to print out my name and says player 1 has this much health. So it lets me know how much health I have. And then it also lets me know all of the moves that I can choose. So I just had it print out the dictionary because it actually ends up looking pretty good when we're playing the game. Gives you an idea of like the moves you can type in. It creates a new variable called P1 command. So that's our player 1 command. And it gives us an input that it converts to lowercase for us. Okay, so it's just going to give us this little cursor on the terminal that we can type next to. So we're going to check a bunch of things. First, if P1 command is in player1.moves. Okay, so player 1 is going up to the player class. Okay, so we're going up to the class and we're going to look in the moves. Now, if we're a fire type, it's going to look through these moves. If we're a water type, it's going to look grass type. We're going to look through these moves. And if we are a water type, it's going to look through these moves. Okay, so we'll go back down. Okay, so if what they typed in is in that move setup, so whatever we had there. So if I type in Ember, it's going to say, okay, that does exist in Ember, so we'll move on to the next check here. The next check is going to make sure that we have more than 0, because every time we use the command or one of the moves, it's going to take 1 from that move count that we had. Okay, if you're not sure where that was, we'll come back down here to 180 in just a second. A lot of stuff here. Okay, so every time I use this move, I can use it 25 times. Every time I use it, this goes down by 1, which is what it's saying. So if this is above 0, we're allowed to use it. Otherwise, if it's 0 or less, we can't use it. So back down to line 180 here. Okay, so if we are allowed to do it, it's now going to calculate whether or not we have a miss. So the way it does that is it creates a variable called mischance, and we're going to get a random int that starts at 0 and ends at that accuracy. So here it goes, player 1, get the accuracy that matches P1 command. So let's say I typed in Ember all the way up here. Okay, so let's just pretend, just so we know. So we'll say I typed Ember, okay? Just so we know that we have that there. So this is the word we're looking for. It's a string, okay? So I typed Ember. So basically P1 command equals Ember. Let's just write that. Okay, P1 command equals Ember, all right? So that's what we're going to pretend. So I typed in Ember, P1 command equals Ember. So here, if Ember is in those moves, now I chose a fire type, so it should be in those moves. If player1.moves is greater than 0, so we haven't used it yet, it's currently set to 25, so it is above 0. Mischance. So here, we're saying player1 accuracy, get whatever is in P1 command. So it's going to go up to player1's accuracy. Okay, so it's going to check on the class, and it's going to go down through, and it's going to see Ember has an accuracy of self dot accuracy amounts 0. So that's a basically a 1 in 20 chance, might be a 1 in 21 if we're counting 0, that will miss. So if it is 1, so if we go back down here, player 2, player 1, okay. So it's going to get whatever number or name matches here. So if I have Ember, this is going to be 20. So it's going to say from 0 to 20, get a random value and store it as mischance. Now, if mischance does not equal 1, we're going to assume there's a hit. So we'll type out a message that just says player 1's name uses whatever that command was, so Ember, against player 2's name. So that would be the CPU if we're playing the CPU, or the name that somebody typed in. Then it's going to calculate if we can get a critical hit or not. So we can do that by creating a variable. I just called it crit. We call on that calculate critical hit. We input our mischance. Now what I did was, let's say this does not equal 1. That means it can, if we're using Ember, has a range from 0 to 20. So if by chance mischance equals 2, this is a critical hit, we'll return the number 2. So let's go back up just so we can see where that is. Okay, so we put in the mischance amount here. It gets stored as chance. It says if the mischance equals 2, type critical hit, return the value of 2. Otherwise, if it's not a 2, return the value of 1. So that's a really easy way to do our critical hit, because what we can do is, let me go back, okay, here, we're either going to get a value of 2 or a value of 1 and store it as crit. If it is a 2, we're going to type out a message that says critical hit, and then we're going to go down to one of these messages. So if player 2.element equals player 1.strong, our move is going to be super effective. Okay, so that means that our type wins over the other type. we're going to calculate an attack power. And I'm rounding this so we have nice round numbers. So I'm going to say player1.movePower.get P1 command. Okay, so it's going to go up to player1 move power P1 command. All right, we're on 187 here. Okay, so it's going to go up and it's going to say, okay, if our element is fire, go to move power, find whatever key for our key value pairs matches the word that was put in for P1 command. So if P1 command was Ember, it's going to return the number 40. If I typed in Fire Punch, it's going to be a 75 that gets returned. If I typed in Inferno, it's going to return a 100. Okay, so I had said we typed in Ember. So it's going to return 40. Back to 187 here. Okay, so 187. So our attack power is rounding this, which should be 40. Okay, that's what that's returning. Multiplied by 1.5, because I'm doing 1.5 because it's super effective. Multiplying it by crit. So if our mischance equals 2, we calculate this. If it's 2, this is going to be times 2. Otherwise, it'll be times 1, so it won't do anything. So that's an easy way to do our critical hit. Now we'll type the message. Player 2's name takes the attack power amount of damage. And then we take player 2's HP and subtract the attack power. Now, if player 2's element equals player 1's weakness type, it's not very effective. So the move won't be very effective. Our attack power is going to be the same idea, except we're multiplying it by 0.5. Now, we could still get a critical hit, which would multiply it by 2, which I think would set it back to normal, whatever the math is on that. Okay, so if our move is super effective, we multiply it by 1.5. Otherwise, we times it by 0.5. And then multiply that by the critical hit if there was one. Same idea, we type the message that says, player 2's name takes this much damage. And then we subtract that actual amount of damage. So if we're not using the super effective move and we're not using the weak version of the move, that means that we're fighting a character with the same type as us. So fire versus fire. So in this case, the attack power just equals the amount multiplied by our critical hit. Okay, I had to take a second there to make sure we're calculating the critical hit somewhere. Okay, then we basically say the same thing with the move. We're kind of using the same code here over and over again. Could probably put this all in one spot after this and not have to write it 3 times. If I would have thought about that, that would have been a smarter way to do it. Yeah. So in that case, player 2.hp minus equals attack. Yeah, so these 2 lines are technically exactly the same as these 2 lines, which is the same as these 2 lines. So I could have potentially just put this one time outside of this else message here. So if I like tabbed it back here, I could potentially just get rid of this and this, because our attack power gets set up. And then we do this. Now, in most other programming languages, these amounts don't exist outside of this block of code, so I'll leave it for that reason. We'd have to do it a different way in that case. Okay, so here we take whatever that move is that we did and subtract 1 from it. So Ember starts out, you have 25 of them. This subtracts 1 and makes it 24. Now, if I typed in something, or if this does equal 1, then I get a miss. The attack missed, and I still subtract 1 from the move, because you used it. This else statement, I don't think this ever runs, actually. And I'll tell you why. Up here, we have if player1.moves is greater than or equal to 0. I think what happens here is once this equals 0, it won't let this if statement run, and I think this always gets skipped and it just goes down to here. So I don't think that else statement there ever runs. I leave it in there mostly because I have it in all the other spots and I didn't want to delete it. So I don't think you'll ever see this message, which is kind of sloppy of me. So here it says you did not choose a valid attack and forfeit your turn. Okay. Player 2 says exactly the same thing, except all the values are switched. So instead of saying player 1 name, it says player 2 name. Here it says player 2 instead. Here it says player 2 instead. There it says player 2 instead. This I renamed to P2 command just to not conflict with the other one. Okay. Anywhere where it said player 1, I put in player 2. And vice versa. Here it says P2 name. Here it says P1 name. So those are switched. So if I go down to my other one where it says type message, player name uses P2 command against P1 name. If I go to player 1's version, theirs is type message equals player 1.name uses P1 command against player 2. So I literally copy and pasted and I swapped all the values. Okay, so this is player 2's turn. All the amounts here are just swapped out for one to the other. Really no other difference. Okay, and I'll scroll back down through this one more time just to kind of make sure if you want to go through and check how everything's written. All right, the difference is on the CPU player, I put a message at the top that says it's the CPU player's turn. I have to make them choose, and I ended up doing that based off of a random number. So here I have random.randomInt 0 to 3 choices, and I put in the CPU command just as a blank string at the beginning just to get rid of some warnings. So here I said if random choice equals 0 and player 2's element equals fire, that's Ember. So that's that move. If random choice equals 1 and we are fire, that's Fire Punch. Otherwise it would be 3 or 2. The element is fire, that's Inferno. So here I'm just going through and saying if we're water and this is 0, water gun. This is 1 and we are water, waterfall. If we are 2 and we are water, hydro pump, which would be the most powerful one of that. Same idea, vine whip, seed bomb, energy ball with corresponding numbers. Okay, so here we have if the CPU command in CPU player 2 move. So remember, CPU is still player 2. So if you're going to start to create CPU turn, I would start with copying player 2's turn, and you're basically getting rid of this text here and altering this instead of P2 command. This would be CPU command. So up here you can see we have the CPU command equal in, so that's what we're doing here, whatever this move is. If it is in player 2.moves, if player 2.moves CPU command is greater than 0, so here we're checking exactly the same stuff that we had before, checking our damage outputs, putting in attack power, all of that. So all of this part is the same as player 2's turn. The only difference is really this top portion. So basically all of this replaces all of this. Okay, so if you want to copy and paste it and look back and go, okay, player 2's turn, delete all that. From actually copy the whole thing, don't delete it. Copy it from here, paste it up in a brand new one, rename it to CPU turn, and then take everything I just selected from here. Okay, that's going to get pasted over the part I told you to delete, which the part I told you to delete is this from CPU turn. Yeah, that's essentially everything. So let me scroll back down and then we'll try it out and make sure everything works. I mean, it should work, but okay. I'll go slowly here. Okay, so we want to import time, import random, set our delays. That's our type message. Okay, beginning part of our player class. I'm just going to kind of go down here through in chunks. And then you guys can pause it as needed. And it's a fun little game. You can play it with 2 people. And it basically functions like a Pokemon game. There's just a lot of text. A lot of lines of code. Hopefully you like the videos this way. I like to explain everything as much as possible, but I realize just me typing it out and then getting typos and have to fix stuff like that, we don't need this in here anymore. I know that can probably be kind of annoying and you just want to get to like, how does it work? What does it do? And then I'll freeze on the main part of the battle there. So you can check all of that. Then you have the while true message. Okay, that takes us down here. We have our different types. Okay, seeing how our game works in PvP versus CPU. And that should take us to the end of it. Yeah. All right. So let me know what you think about this version of a video compared to me just walking through and typing it line by line. If you guys want me to do a video like that where it explains it a bit more and goes through everything, I can certainly do that. It's just going to be a long video. And I don't typically break these videos up into sections just so someone can find it all in one spot. All right, so let's try this out. I'll go ahead and hit play. Let's make this a little bigger here. All right, so you can see it kind of typed out there what we had. Oh, that's not how you spell choose game type. There's a typo. All right, the nice thing is if I put PvP, it will give me a 2-player game. Player 1's name, I'll put Jason, and I'm going to be fire type. Player 2. Now, ideally, what you'd have to do here is maybe write down the types you're going to pick, before you choose them, so that way someone doesn't cheat and change their name here or change theirs. So this is going to be Bob, and Bob is going to be a grass type because he didn't want to cheat and he already picked ahead of time. Okay, Jason, is your turn. Choose an attack. Okay, so it shows me here I have 500 health, and it shows me my 3 choices. Now, if I wanted, I could just Control-C, Control-V on any of these. Okay, Jason uses Ember against Bob. It is super effective. Bob takes 60 damage. Now, ideally, you'd want to use Inferno. But remember, the more you use these, the more of a chance you have to miss, especially Inferno, or whatever the third one is. All right, Bob. Well, Bob can't do much damage because I'm strong compared to his moves. So Bob is going to do Energy Ball. Okay, the attack missed. Oh, bad luck, Bob. Okay, Jason, is your turn. Choose an attack. All right, I'm going for the kill. Inferno. Jason uses Inferno against Bob. It is super effective. Bob takes 150 damage. Bad luck, Bob. Bob, it is your turn. Let's see how much health Bob has left. Bob has 290 health. He's going to use Energy Ball again. Okay, Bob uses Energy Ball against Jason. It is not very effective. Jason takes 45 damage. Oh, bad luck, Bob. Really bad. All right, my turn again. All right, I'm going for the kill. Let's get that critical hit. Inferno. Jason uses Inferno against Bob. It is super effective. Didn't get the crit. Bob takes 150 damage. Bob, it is your turn. Choose an attack. Bob. So if Bob types in something wrong, like pickle. Okay, you did not choose a valid attack and forfeit your turn. Jason, it is your turn. Choose an attack. Alright, we're going Inferno again. Oh, it missed. Bob, it is your turn. Okay, Bob goofed again. He typed in the wrong thing. Dang it, Bob. I just want to get this over with. Okay. It's my turn. I'm going Inferno again. Hopefully I don't miss again. Some of this uses the rock, paper, and scissors mechanics for part of this. Oh, Bob is done for. Critical hit. It's super effective. Bob takes 300 damage. Poor Bob. Bob fainted. Jason is the winner. That is true. Play again? Yes. Okay, but this time, so it's restarting the game. Welcome to Poketext. Alright, we're going to just do... the nice thing is I can just type in PVC or CPU, because I did this as an else statement, so as long as it doesn't say PvP, it'll accept it. Player 1, input your name. Mr. Alt. Mr. Alt, choose your type. Grass. Okay, Mr. Alt, it is your turn. Okay, so the computer player picked theirs. We don't know what they get off the top. So we just got to hope that we have something good. I'm going to do Energy Ball. The attack missed. Oh, that's bad luck. Okay, it is the CPU's turn. The attack missed. Okay, that's good for me. Mr. Alt, it is your turn. Choose an attack. Alright, we're going Energy Ball again. I'm not going to play this one all the way through. I just want to make sure it shows something else happens. Oh, that's bad luck on my part. CPU's turn. CPU used Ember against Mr. Alt. Oh, critical hit. It is super effective. So they're fire type. So we're losing this no matter what unless they just get really unlucky. 120 damage. There's no chance we would win this. Okay. So that's the game. As you can see, it functions. It works. Happy good times. So once again, thanks for watching. Hope you found this video entertaining and useful and all that stuff. If you'd like to see more of this type of stuff, let me know. I'll try to do other videos like this. But for the time being, I'm just kind of doing these for my class so my students have things to help them through their final projects. So that being said, thank you for watching. Take care.